To all the counselors, Counselor Hogan, Caldwell, President Hudson, and Councilor Schultz that are here with us today. This is the education, it's a combined meeting with education and DPW. We are going to discuss the STEAM school. We are getting an update in the different aspects of the project. And for that, we want to welcome Mr. Manning. Suzanne Slack, can you join us here? So we can get this going. Do you need? Since nobody's here. And welcome to all the Syracuse city staff that's in the room. Thank you for joining us. Oh, hi, Bruno. I know, Bruno. Thank you. So how do you want to...
He's part of the team, yeah?
I know. So, Mr. Manning, you have the floor.
Okay, and I appreciate being here again for an update for the STEAM school. Last time we met, it was virtual, so it's nice to see people in person. I miss it, maybe I'm old school. Go through the slides very quickly. Some of it will be redundant. What I found, if you can indulge me, because this is completely integrated, a lot of the questions will be addressed through the presentation, but you have the PowerPoint right questions and we'll be happy to address them at the very end. Also at the very end, because it's over there, we have a nice little packet for you that gives a lot of the supporting information that we're going to talk about. But of course I left it in my book bag over there and I'll pass them out afterwards. So the STEAM school, as you're aware, it will be the first regional science, technology, entertainment, arts, and math regional high school in New York State. Something you need to be very proud of. There are other STEM schools across the state and even across the country. There are also, even in central New York, regional CTE programs, but they have never had the success of ITC. So I want to stress this is not ITC 2.0, but it is with the arts, but we have adopted so many of the successfulness of ITC and CTE that we're going to implement it. And I'm very honored to work with Bruno because that success is transforming over to STEAM, and we're just going to give other opportunities. So I'll go through a little bit of a refresher where we were, where we're going, and the first thing is, if I can, of course it's not going to reach, right? Oh, there we go. Is really review the process real quick. The process, the first thing we talked about is why are we doing this? You know, and I think that's very important. You know, we tend in society do the same thing over and over again, and we never stop back and reflect, well, why do we do this? And I'm big on Simon Sinek, start with why. So I'm going to talk a little bit, it's going back and talk about why we started this process years ago. Next, come down to all the collaboration. For those who don't know, I was in public education 34 years, started with this process, and it's an honor and privilege to come back, but it's been the most collaborative process I've ever been in my professional career. And I can't thank you enough for allowing me to do this again at the end of my career. And I always think it's nice because I started with the Syracuse School District. I'm a proud product of the Syracuse School District, worked there several years, went to different positions, and now I'm coming back to the tail of my career. Next comes down to, again, I'm done. Really, when we started this process, and I'll go through it in the presentation, when I came back on board out of retirement and said we were doing the STEAM school because of COVID, a number of responses were should be in the building. And they were fantastic, don't get me wrong, but we can't be everything to everyone. So instead of having, and some people say, well, those are nice programs that you and Bruno put together. In other respect to my colleague, we're not that bright, okay? We worked with Center State and said, what are the needs of the greater Syracuse area? That is how this has been developed. And I talk about the collaborative process. The needs came from society. And when we say needs, these are going to be potential jobs and employment. And you heard us say about being an employability incubator down the road. So we'll talk about why we're putting the programs in that building. Okay. Next, we did things a little differently. Once we found out the programs that need to be in the building, we then developed the curriculum. Now, I always tell people that I worked for state ed for 7 years. Please don't hold that against me. But part of it is we sat in rooms and we built curriculum, and then we would tell high schools what to do with it. And later on, found out there was a disconnect between the real world and higher ed. This approach makes sure there's a connection, and it goes along with the working collaboratively. The next step, and I'll figure out the arrangement on this power and this clicker in a second, and I apologize. I wonder if you have better shot at that than I do. But the next stop was, okay, now we are going to look at the design of the building. Traditional renovations or new schools, and I've had the ability in my professional career to build new schools. You go to an architect and say, build a school. And then afterwards, we tried to figure out the program, and we literally sometimes ram the program in here. What we were saying was, okay, now that we know the program, now we're going to work with an architect and have them work around the needs. So that's where the design, and the next one, you have probably a better shot. Okay, so I told you it's a teamwork, is the construction. And I think that's part of the reason we're here, to talk a little about where we are with the construction. What we're referring to is, this is the reverse engineering. So right in the, click it, in the middle, we say this is reverse engineering. We're doing everything backwards, keeping the end in mind. So we'll start with, that is the process, just a refresher. Now really the why. The why is really opportunity and access for all students. 700 plus school districts in New York State. Depending on your zip code, you may have more access or less access to a program. It's just the way it is. Unless your family has the means to send you to a private school, or you move. Syracuse, and I've always said Syracuse School District always peeked around the corner and was always the cutting edge. Had school choice for CT programs through the high schools. This just expands it to the county school districts. And the advantage to that is it gives you to run new CT programs that don't exist, and you were able to fill those with the student population. Because one of the questions is, why don't you just do this internally? There's an option, but you have 27 outstanding CT programs. We'll add 6 more and some other ones. You don't have the capacity. You will draw and deplete from other programs. So that is one of the factors in there. You can do it, but what are you going to give up? This way, the vision is you don't have to give everything up. And again, I'm proud product of Syracuse School District, and as a former district superintendent, seeing on the outside, you have a lot to be proud of what you're offering this community. And the other thing is competing against limited resources and duplicating programs. With all the school districts, and then you look at the BOCES. The BOCES by law, 1950, is pretty scary that I know these years and everything, was Syracuse School District being a 5 is excluded by law. So I remember being the district superintendent for BOCES competing with the same resources as the Syracuse School District, because that was my job and that was the superintendent's job. So when I got the call, I said, let's not compete and not duplicate, because when you duplicate, you can't give it to the fidelity across 700 school districts. And don't get it wrong, we would all agree that if we can do all these programs in all 700 school districts to the caliber we're talking about, everyone would do it. The resources aren't there, financial, you can't do it. So we're not going to duplicate services. And so then it comes down to, and this came from our business relationships and from the needs assessments, want to become an employability incubator. So I'm going to explain that a little bit. When students come through these programs, and it's CT included, as also a Regents diploma, we want 3 options. We want them to go right in the workforce, to have a job and hopefully a career. We want them to go to higher education, or what we're starting to see is that go parallel. And what I mean by parallel, and I'll apologize, I have some of my own terms I use, and I guess it's the advantage when you're retired, you can do it. But what I mean by parallel is you are getting hired by a business, a company, a not-for-profit, and they're paying for additional training. They're paying for higher education. And we hear about the higher ed debt. This is one way not to incur all this debt and start a career. We put a quote up there because I've always said that we do a great job in public education preparing students for the past. The public education system for high school was designed for standardization and compliance. It was to prepare students for the assembly line. That's why we have the 45 minutes, the bell rings, and you do everything in silos. And it was good intentions, but that's not exist anymore. You think about all our positions, you at the Common Council, how many times you say, okay, I'm gonna use 45 minutes, we're just gonna do the budget. Okay, now we're gonna do a narrative. Then we're gonna do, everything is integrated. And that's what we need in society. I always, and these two are gonna get bored and hate when I say it, but I don't believe we have a dropout problem. We have a disengagement problem. Students start getting disengaged in middle school, and legally they tell us in high school. Because they're bored. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates didn't drop out of college because they were dumb. They were bored and they wanted to apply. So we always say we just can't do what we've always done and expect different results. So the next slide goes to, okay, the collaboration. Back in 2018, when we started this initiative, we really, school superintendent, loved working with them and worked them for years. But when we talked about this, we said almost 20 years ago, there was talk about a regional career technical education facility right in that building. It didn't take off in a number of reasons. So we said, let's learn from our mistakes. Why reinvent the wheel? First thing was collaboration. There are 23 school districts in legislation in Onondaga, Cortland, Madison, BOCES. We literally met with them individually and talked to them, would they endorse this concept, and showed them the value added and what it can do for all students. We have letters of endorsements from back in 2018. That their school board said, yes, we want this to happen. Next thing, we had to go legislatively. So some people say, how come this has taken so long? We've taken our time to build a coalition and support. I sat down with the superintendent. We kind of laughed because if you think this would be the second district superintendent working on this when he retires, the second school superintendent, two county executives, two commissioners of education, two governors. So if you think about the legislative support, but the initiative is still going strong. People really believe it.
Some of us stick around though.
Yes, or some of us come back.
Longer than
You know, that's
others.
yeah, some of us come back. So, and we called it 2020. The former governor approved this, gave it the legislation, and I call it, we're crossing zip codes. We're crossing zip codes, and then there was a commitment with the building aid for about $74 million. Now, if you go back and you do the history, never had 100% support for the regional with the suburban districts, and never had the funding. So it never took off. So those are lessons we learned from other mistakes. And as we've been going through this, we've been taking a lot, talking to other districts, a lot of the big five. What should we do differently? I'm not saying we're going to do this perfectly, and not saying we're not going to have bumps in the road. We know we will. So in 2021, as I mentioned, it came down. Everybody had some great ideas to put in that building. The capacity is not there, and again, you can't do everything to everybody and do it well. So we partnered with Center State CO, and I'll get to another slide, and said, can you go out and just find out what is really needed in the greater Syracuse area? And they did a needs assessment. And they took the lead on this and gave us the information because, again, we wanted a third party to tell us these are the concentrations. And I jump around a little bit, but what's really neat, I was working with Oswego University because they're going to partner with us. They did their own kind of needs assessment, and they came down with the same kind of concentrations, and that's why they want to partner with it. So it kind of affirms that the needs are there. Not saying that Center State didn't do their job, but it's always nice when somebody else says, you know what, you're on the right path. And so then in 2021, once we knew what the needs are, we started collecting, working together internally, and the needs assessment said that CT is it's one of the factors needs to be in there, and the arts. So that's how we came up with programs, which we will talk about. And then the curriculum development, what we did very differently, and again, my terms, is we pulled in subject matter experts in those respective areas. And I'll just use one for example, like robotics and animation. Say, great, we pulled in stakeholder groups with just the experts in the area and had them sit around the table with two curriculum writers. We were there, but we were just flies in the wall. And they absorbed all the essential skills and all the technical skills that need to be in the curriculum. Now, the reverse engineering, usually it comes from state ed the other way around. We went to the field and said, what do you need? And our subject matter experts as curriculum writers are putting the curriculum together. And Bruno will talk about where we're at, and you'll have an example once I pass out this pack as to where we're going. What was a nice surprise in 2021, and I think it was a relationship with Center State, where they went for the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, and I call it triple BRC, because in education, public education, we have so many acronyms, and we should have an app, so I just, we're in there as one of the 6 programs, and up to $10 million to assist with it. What was very exciting about it, that became collaborative, and we did how many programs and walked to talk to people, and the other 5 programs in there all want to work with the STEAM school and became a partnership because they see us as an employability incubator. They literally said, you are going to give us our next workforce, and that's the concept. So next, we said, okay, this is very unique. This is going to draw from the suburban districts. So we have to have an application and admissions criteria, and we'll talk about that. This is a regional school for all the districts, but it's run by the Syracuse School District. So we said they have buy-in. Now that is not a unique concept, and I'll do some examples. Salve High School has LinkCore K-8. It is a Salve-run high school, but those are LinkCore students. If you think in the Nation School in Lafayette, the Nation School is separate, but it's run by Lafayette. So it's the same concept. Somebody oversees it, but you have a joint venture.
On a bigger scale.
So we've learned from that. So now we're at the point where, again, thinking the reverse engineering, could have went right out and said, let's find an architect and build a school. We now have what we need to be in there. The RFPs went out for the architect. They came back, they're bringing review, and then it will be a construction manager saying, this is how we would like it done, because this is what we really want to meet the students. So that's just a refresher of the collaboration. So now
That's a joint decision
Yes.
between the city school district, the city, and the county?
Correct.
As far as architect goes and the general contractor?
Correct. A collaborative effort. We've had work group meetings discussing all that. Again, that aspect of all 3 is very unique from where I came from, but I can say it is very collaborative, and it's been a great learning experience and a great process. And I'm saying it from an outsider that has a unique. So going back to, and I changed the word partnerships because it's really relationships. These are the individuals that came forth and are supporting us in so many different ways. And relationships where they will come and they were part of our development. Again, our subject matter experts said, if you're going to build brand new curriculum that's never been done and new programs, this is what students really need to know. They need to know when they come into our workforce, if they're going on to higher ed, and we have 2 great curriculum writers. They put everything together, and you'll see it later on. What is really exciting about all this is they're now starting to partner with each other. And they're partnering with each other to put up project-based learning experiences for students. And then even the higher ed partners, we have 3, and we don't have the MOU signed, so I'm not going to give names, but there are 3 up there, and this is what's occurring with them. We're working it through. They're going to have concurrent enrollment. Students are going to come out with college credits. We're talking about if they go through a certain concentration, certain metrics, those colleges will have automatic admissions. Said, if they went through our curriculum and they went through the STEAM school, our professors will work with them. Part of it, you'll be on campus, back and forth. We don't need an SAT, ACT, or an essay, or an interview or a picture with somebody on a rowing machine to say they are successful, and I probably should
Can I
have said
ask
that.
a quick question when it comes to this? Because it was so long ago I was in school.
Yeah.
I know that when Central Tech was open, they used to move people from the different schools at a certain time to go to Central Tech to do the curriculum.
I'm glad and I missed that. I'm glad you brought that up. What is very unique, the suburban school districts do have some opportunities for CT. It's half-day bus. Mm-hmm. This is a full-day integrated program. So students will start first thing in the morning, and again, we'll have the capacity of 1,000 students. We're going to ladder up with a freshman class and slowly work and do it right. But if the students enter in this program, they will start here beginning first thing in the morning and go the whole day.
How will that affect students who are in sports and extracurricular activities?
We have to get through those details yet, but also there's talk about the stadium behind ITC, so they will have the ability to do sports right there with the Syracuse School District, but we have to get the details. So in short, yes, they will have the opportunity to do everything they would do in a home school, the extracurricular activities, the sports, and everything. It would just be there.
And it would still be 60-40, the percents.
Yeah, 60-40%. So, yeah, that's our next step is what are the details? So the short, your answer, they already have opportunity access to everything they would have every place else. How are we going to do it? We just have to find, we'll be working that through. And
Will we be responsible for transportation from the 40%?
Own schools from the suburban districts, no different than BOCES in legislation, they provide their own transportation. So, and that's true to all the programs, even with the BOCES, if there's a lot of satellite where they have to bus them to WC and Y a lot. They're responsible for their own transportation.
Okay.
So on these partnerships, so the one nice thing about the higher ed was they said they want automatic admission, and sitting down with some of the higher ed said, wow, we're looking at the curriculum, and in the curriculum, I'll talk about that in a second, some of these students are going to come out with skills we don't even have yet. And some of our professors, we don't want students to come here and be bored. So they're actually talking about, why don't we make them TAs? Part of their financial package, well, they'll come in and they'll be TAs in those curriculums because they're going to have cutting edge. And I can't say that it's because of us, it's because of these partnerships. They're coming in and saying, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And they're making relationships with software and having that donated. So there's a lot of the partnerships because in the curriculum, and again, I use things very simple, I almost think it as 3 pillars. We're very fortunate that we had a curriculum writer that was trained in project-based learning in Buck Institute. So the first column, and again, I do it just for myself, is project-based learning. How authentic projects will students work together, integrating everything. So we're talking like Syracuse Film. When, and just hypothetically, when the Binge was here, they can come in and they can work in front of the camera, behind the camera, if they do entertainment. They have to, the contract has to be X amount of students. That's authentic, real projects that students get to work with. The middle column is they will earn a Regents diploma, because that's one of the, I hear that a little bit. Is this a public school? One is a public school. You will earn a Regents diploma. You will have every advantage of a Regents high school diploma that you can actually get the endorsements. You can get the biliteracy for the world languages. Bruno will talk about, we have 6 pathways that you get CTE endorsement. And the other thing we're doing is concentrations for the arts. And we're working with concurrent enrollment and actually working with sequencing. Like when I went to school, you had to have a concentration. Well, if you want to have a concentration in dance, that will be in there. If there will be with music, that's going to be in there. And we have to be, I shouldn't say we have to, but it would be remiss because we have that venue. And we have a venue where our partners at Foria said, everybody wants to use that auditorium, but when they do a concert, once they do a concert and high school students actually perform with professionals, and our students are working professionals with the sounding, lighting, we have automation. Everything is working together and sharing that facility. That is a project-based, authentic project.
So I know this is still in the planning stages, and I know that there's still some pieces that have to be discussed. But when it comes to the teachers in the school, how would that be negotiated? Would it be Syracuse City School District teachers? Would it be coming?
The teachers will be Syracuse City School Districts. Again, again, I do things simple. It's run by the Syracuse School District, so they're Syracuse City employees. We will have, part of our plan is we're going to have to recruit, and some of these teacher certifications don't exist. Right. But we've gone through it before, we know how to do it, and actually through our partnerships, we've had people say, I always wanted to teach, and I kind of missed that opportunity. I said, well, if you go on one of the CT pathways, there's a way to get your certification, and they get all excited. So it's part of the selection process, but it hasn't happened yet. But they will be Syracuse City employees, everyone in that building.
So we have a ballpark figure of how many teachers we're going to need to staff a whole new school?
I don't think we overall employees, and I'm just going to spitball here because it's parking spots, 100. But exactly how many teachers, how many maintenance, and we're not there yet.
And I know Suzanne's probably got that all figured out as
She
far as
does.
the operation budget for that
The only bad thing is she cut me from it. I don't know. That's right.
and the state money, because I think our, I think everybody on this council loves the concept.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we, commend everybody who
Yeah.
favored this
Yeah.
and put this forward.
Yeah.
But I think, it's our fiduciary responsibility to talk about how the funding goes for this.
And the fund, and that's a great point. For the funding, the capital, and Suzanne more versed than I am with the 74 million. But the other
It's
concept,
74 million.
Is
That
capital.
was, that figure came up, when that figure come up, because obviously that could change with
2019, there was an estimate, thank you. In 2019, there was an estimate provided that was the 74 million. That will be revised, I'm going to estimate in about a year. When the final design is completed from the architects, the design's approved by SED, they go through a process to recalculate building aid units based on the curriculum that Jody's pulling together. So a dance room is worth so many building aid units. A drone classroom be worth a different number of units. They'll calculate that, and they'll update the building cost index. So you might imagine lumber in 2019 is probably at a different cost than what it's going to be in 2023.
We're saying that now.
So that's all going to get updated, and then the state will do a new calculation.
And they'll align with whatever the estimate is, because I know the superintendent will approve the design
Yes,
and everything.
Yes.
And the county will select the contractors.
yes.
And
So
then
we're all,
then the county will have the final say on the construction.
so what's nice about the work agreement, what's before you for vote on Monday, is that we've already agreed to a lease, how the lease transaction is going to occur. But a part of that is this Schedule B for the work agreement. That's really how we work together now, before we have a lease. So when there's the process we're in now to select an architect, and when it's time to select construction workers, when the construction's actually going on and things come up, the three entities are going to work together collaboratively. Hopefully we'll all come to the same conclusion, but in the event that we don't, if we don't all agree, then during this phase, as you mentioned, the school district has the final say for the architect and the design. But then after that, it really does transition to the county, because the county's going to borrow the money and manage the construction project.
Well, it looks
the
like there's a
renovation project.
halftime in there. 50% of the construction's done in
There's-
the agreement, correct?
You're right. So there's 3 steps to the design. Initially, the architect will draw a schematic and bring it to state ed. We'll go with them, and state ed will say yes or no, or you need to change these parts of it. Then the architects will go back, and when they're halfway done with the full design, they go back to SED, again, get approval, maybe make some changes. Then at the end, when the design's complete and we all agree to it, it goes again to the state, and that's when they start the calculation.
And so this is going to be the same template as far as paying for the bonding, which the county will bond, unlike the joint school construction board.
Correct.
The county will bond, the general obligation bonds probably, and then we'll pay them through our anticipated state aid, or we'll have a separate stream of state aid specifically for this.
So it will be lease aid, which is something new. Our school district has not had lease aid
done
in the past, but other districts have. So the bonding will probably occur before construction. They'll go through the construction phase, and they'll be paying interest payments, I would assume, during that time. Once the lease commences, then the lease aid will start. So the county's going to have some debt payments early on without lease aid coming against it. So the 15 years of debt is going to be a little bit out of alignment with the 15 years of aid, which is what happens with a regular school building project.
Okay.
Do you have a sense from presenting all these projects for approval to get to actual construction? Do you have a sense of the time?
In the past,
Thanks.
for JSCB projects, it's about a year from when we get to selecting an architect and getting designs approved.
Okay.
So it's about 1 year.
Oh, that-
Now, if I can ask one more thing about state aid, I know President Hudson sat on the joint, or sits on the joint school construction board, and I sat on the first one. Will the aid pay for everything? Because I know we had an issue with the first joint school construction board about them only paying for what they called teachable space.
So the calculation for the amount of aid is based on the building aid units or teachable space. So what the counselor's referring to is if we do a large renovation of a principal's office, it doesn't generate building aid units or aid, but if we're renovating a classroom,
Or
it
the
does.
hallways.
The hallways, there are areas that are not instructional space. They're part of the construction cost. So there is, in the building aid or lease aid calculation, for a high school, 25% of the total cost can be for those non-allowable areas and for soft costs.
So
for
where does that
incidental
money come
costs.
from?
Pardon me?
Where does that money come from?
It's still in the lease aid calculation.
Oh, so we
You've
will
got to
get
do it
state aid
within
for
that.
that?
And so, let's say that 74 million is the final number. We will design a project to that cost. And it'll have alternates in it, so if money's left over, you could add something, or if there's not enough money, you have a contingency set aside. But we'll build to that scope, to that dollar.
Because we had issues with the first joint school.
Yes,
construction.
we're much better now with JSCB Phase 2. Absolutely. We learned those
Massaging
lessons.
things.
So,
Together.
so knowing that the numbers that you have now, which are estimations, and knowing that they will increase because it's what the way we're living now, do you have, where will that money, that increase be coming from? Is it calculated already?
It will be part of the state aid. That's not to say other things won't happen, but it'll be part of that calculation.
And being that you're such a great numbers person, and I know you don't have a crystal ball, so with the way things have been running, it's JSCB and even the city, with our prices going up, what do you maybe foresee, 30% increase on this?
I can't say. I mean, 2 days ago, I heard that consumer price index went up 8.6%. It hasn't been that high since 1981 or 82. They increased, the feds increased the interest rate by 0.75, which it's probably been 25, 30 years since we've seen that. So I think we're in inflation, we're heading towards recession. I don't know what that's
Don't
gonna mean.
speak those words.
Well,
I like
we
the way
need
you
to
think.
be ready
So
for
it'd
it.
be up to the county if there was a project labor agreement in this issue, right?
I believe so, yeah, yep. Because they're managing the construction portion.
Right.
So that is on the capital side. When you talk about funding, also the operational costs, is that 40% of those students will be coming from the suburbs. And this is nothing new. BOCES is an educational service agency. I think there's 47 states that run an educational service. It's not, people refer to BOCES as a school, some people do. It's not a school, it's a service agency. The students, and really it's designed the same concept. If you can't offer a program in-house, how do you do it? You share services. And students from the suburbs go to the BOCES, the Board of Education, and they pay tuition. The same concepts here, so again, we're not reinventing the wheel. Students that are coming from a suburban district will pay tuition, and that covers, the operation for that building, a certain percentage, probably 40%. We have to figure out those calculations, even with the BOCES that's calculated annually. What does it cost you to run a program? In simple math, okay, you run a program at the BOCES, you're gonna have X amount of students there, you divide it up by number of districts, and they pay their share. Same concept here. But we do not have those numbers yet because we have to calculate. But we're using the same method, and that's what the suburban districts agree to because they're used to it. It's nothing new.
I think our main concern, and I know you got it all factored out, is obviously to have enough capital aid to get to the finish line, and also operational aid to actually run the school. And we're confident that the state's going to come through for us.
Yes, so there are a lot of factors, and with everything that's unsettled these days, for example, you read in the paper, school district enrollment is declining.
Well, the state aid for the city of Syracuse has been flat, and last year, and during COVID, some of us, realized that, of course, they held back state aid for us.
They actually ended up paying it. They
But they
threatened
ended
all
up paying
year.
it, but, we didn't know
We
that
had to
was going
wait,
to
we were
happen.
biting our nails, you're right. So the state aid, a couple things are going on. Next year, when we do the 23-24 budget, we'll get another estimated 17 million of state aid that's just part of the final fulfilling the promise for fully funding foundation aid. It's gonna depend in a couple of years when this school opens, how many students are in the district. It's gonna depend on the poverty factors, the special ed factors, and the ENL. So it's all subject to change. My guess would be we will still be in a good financial position here in the Syracuse City School District. We'll be ready to open up the doors for the ninth graders when the school is done and start welcoming in the suburban students
So
as well.
the first year will be ninth grade, second year 10th grade?
Yes,
third year, all three, but that's how we're ramp it up like that?
Right.
We want to ramp it up that way because, one, these are very unique programs. We want to take our time and do it right. And when when the student makes their commitment, we can follow it up. And I believe that's how ITC did, and in my former life, we did high schools like that. It just makes sense to do it right and follow it up.
So we'll like, it won't bill, I don't want to use that term, but anybody comes from like Fabius or from Skinny Atlas or something, that their school district would have to bring the money, or they would be paid. We would bill them for the tuition, correct?
That's correct.
That is correct. And that's what the method they're used to. They're used to, we try to use things that we're familiar. The transportation was a great question. When you go to a BOCES or a different site, homeschool's responsible, they get the transportation aid. They pay tuition, and everything is fluid. I mean, I know somebody said about Suzanne with numbers. I mean, that's what you have right there. Everything is so fluid in public education. You just need somebody monitoring it daily.
Because it says right in the agreement, that the city at the end, if the payment doesn't go to to take care of the bonding for the county, where the city is on the.
Yeah, we have to take care of that.
And so that's why it's important, when you look at our budget every year, going forward, once this lease starts, Joe Barry will make sure that I've got a set aside for that lease payment in the budget, and you guys can confirm that, so that you'll have that assurance that we have the money set aside.
Just gave a thumbs up to Joe.
Yeah. He keeps me in check. So right now, for example, the city does verify that my debt obligations are fully budgeted, to make sure that I haven't left any debt payments out of the coming year
I mean,
budget.
I think we're all on the, we have to ask these questions, but I think we're all on board with this.
Absolutely.
I mean, we love the idea and the concept, and it's sort of like the melding together of all the different districts and having the school right in the center, right across from Billings Park. I think it's terrific, but, we want to make sure that we're all set on the
So,
fiduciary.
speaking on questions, I have one that should probably be common sense, but I'm not gonna make an assumption, okay?
Okay.
So, with this school, our city kids, are they still attached to Say Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great question.
so-
And by the way, the field behind Central Tech is a city park too, so, Rossley Park, so we'll have to do something with that too.
We're working on that.
Working on that. So,
Working on that.
Jody, I have one more question about the relationships segment
Yeah.
here. I think I read in the paper that we're contracting or subcontracting with Gearhead Rentals from Rochester, and I think they're opening offices in Syracuse. Is that?
That is correct. Gearhead is and they're up there. They rent all the equipment, sound equipment for the amphitheater. What their concept is, with the movie theater coming in, come and do a movie, come and do a concert. You don't have to bring your equipment. We'll rent it to you. So because everything is coming to Syracuse with the film and the concert, they're actually opening a facility here. Now, they're next to their business model, which is great, is they are working, and they're actually working with CT right now and saying, okay, students, we're going to loan you that equipment when you get to that unit, because you're going to be trained on cutting edge equipment. School district, you don't have to pay for it. We're going to train you. And what they want to do is, the amphitheater is a perfect example, because this is a short term they have, is those students will be trained, and when a concert comes there, don't bring your equipment, don't bring the workforce, because we have it. And in short term, we're talking project-based learning, students can work at the amphitheater as a summer job. What a great summer job. They're getting real world experience, and they're even saying if students graduate, and Bruno can talk about ITC, because that's where they started. If they go 30 miles, work in OCC, go to OCC or Oswego, they can still have that job. Disney on Ice, things like that. That's what they do, and their business model is we're getting them the workforce, they're gonna loan us with cutting edge equipment. And one thing we know about equipment, it changes immediately.
Yeah.
And so they saw it as, everything is a partnership, becomes a win-win. They're winning on their end, our students are winning with the experience and the possible jobs.
And the fact that they're establishing operations here, I think is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So is that a requirement for us to work with others or not, not necessarily?
Partnership or,
Yes, to partner with.
well, I can tell you, the relationship partnerships, we haven't said no to anyone.
Okay.
We haven't said, anybody comes in and everybody has a different level they want to do it. Be honest, I hope we do run the problem. We have to have some criteria. That'd be a good problem to have. But right now, anybody that wants to partner and come involved, we said, let's find a way to do it. And I think that's what they love about it, because they're like, and some of them are given financially, Amazon 1 point. Others are like, we may not be able to give financial, but we can give mentoring, we can give internships. There's room for everyone at this point, and that's what's making it really exciting. And like you said, what they're doing now is the gaming, well, I'm trying to innovate the, let me try again. Five Peaks Animation is now housed in WCNY. They are going to be working with us with that, but they're also working with the zoo, and they want to do animation for students to do real animation that's on PBS, and students get their names in the credit. So they're partnering under Syracuse Film. So like I said, they're all getting together and say, what if we work together offering opportunities for students? Again, it is in kind with services, it's in kind with experience. Some will give financial, but they're like, if we put this project together, the students of Syracuse can have an experience that no others can have. And it
So
gets
along
really-
that point, what about Lincoln Auditorium? Is that going to be revamped and?
That will be renovated to where it was. The Historical Society, the buildings, the interior, exterior comes back.
The
Perfect
first home of the Syracuse Symphony.
Yeah,
It was acoustically one of the finest auditoriums in the world, actually.
and that's in the plans. It has to come back where it was. And we said the partnerships, like the Red House is a big partnership. If they do a production there, they do, the superintendent at one time wanted Hamilton produced there with our students. Again, the collaboration is you do a production in that auditorium, and you do high school students with professionals, with behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. What a great experience.
Yeah.
This is, you can't get more authentic than that. And it either affirms this is the way you want to go, or affirms you don't. But they still put it on their resume, and it puts Syracuse on the map. You can't have that in a traditional school. I'm sorry, you just don't have those resources. Red House and Syracuse, they would love to do it. Syracuse Film would love to do it in every school. You can't do it. So that auditorium will come up to speed, and it'll be utilized together. I'm going to stress that word collaborative. It's not, I'm sure people like to use that auditorium just for me. You know, I get it, but no, everything's going to be inclusive, and that was part when they came in with the collaborative process about curriculum. Said this is not the purpose to try to sell us something or to take, this is going to be a win-win. So, and we're building the plane as we go, but it's been really exciting because they're saying, we can do this project, we can do this project, and this is how we're going to involve your students. And again, ultimate goal, some of those companies said, you're going to give us our future workforce. I get it, instead of going around the world or recruiting, that they're right here. And I just think that's the way you build your farm program. Build a relationship in high school, give internships, you build that relationship, they're going to stay here. Yes, I'm self-serve, I'm product here, I want to stay here. We want them to stay here. But they're like, yeah, we don't have to go out and recruit. And some of them said when we recruit, no disrespect to the climate, but they recruit all over the world. They come here and all of a sudden the fall comes and this white stuff comes down and they're like, we don't like it, they get out.
I just want to make sure Susan stays the whole 15 years. That's-
She's going nowhere.
She's the lady with the money.
So these relationships, and even as of today, I got people I'd like to talk to. Talking to more people, and we've yet said no. And it could be a small role, a big role, and some of these in the companies we have had big visions, and we're like, we're going to do it.
So in the interest of time, I would like to give Bruno an opportunity to tell us a little bit about the programs. Thank you, Joey.
So we want to talk about the traditional fine arts concentrations and opportunities first, very briefly. This is something that we're really going to stress and work on this summer. So kind of presenting it a little backwards because we are doing this, but the traditional fine arts concentrations and opportunities will include art, music, dance, anything you can think of within the fine arts. We want to encourage kids and families to apply to these pathways that want to have these concentrations and want to work on those. Again, I know that Jody had mentioned it earlier, I want to mention it again. This doesn't necessarily mean that we are looking for a piano virtuoso to come to this building. Right? We really base what we currently do in the Syracuse City School District with our 27 CTE pathways is we base them on interest. That's the most important aspect for a student getting into one of the pathways, is that that child is interested in what that pathway provides. So a student who is interested in pursuing dance, interested in pursuing 2D or 3D art, who's interested in some sort of music, orchestra, band, choral music, that's what we're really looking for, that passion, that spark, that opportunity to be engaged and stay engaged within their high school tenure. So with our traditional fine arts concentration opportunities, New York State has traditional fine arts curriculums already written. We want to write Syracuse City fine arts curriculums. So take those curriculums and, just like Jody had mentioned before, bring our local talent to the table and produce that curriculum in a backwards manner. Tell us what a student coming in at 14 years old would need to know about art, about music, about dance, about anything in the fine arts. And we're going to write and make those curriculums really our own. Definitely make them what Syracuse City curriculums are. That way we can show what that integration looks like between all those common classes that we all have to take: math, English, science, social studies, PE, health, all those courses that are required by New York State that students have to take. How can we integrate things? How do we make things work together, meld together? Because again, that disengagement problem that Jody was talking about, if I'm a student who comes to the STEAM high school because I really want to concentrate in dance, is there an opportunity for me to earn my dance credit but fulfill my PE requirement? And those are conversations that we would have to have with, like, New York State to ensure that we can do. So the traditional fine arts pathways that we are going to focus on and create, those are what we want to focus on this summer. We're bringing back together a committee that was established prior to COVID, and then COVID obviously put a little bit of damper on things and a pause on things. But we're going to reestablish those this summer and really make them our own for the traditional fine arts concentrations. And really take advantage of that Lincoln Auditorium. And what you're going to notice is the Lincoln Auditorium won't only be a centerpiece for the fine arts. It won't only be the place where drama happens, or a dance recital happens, or a choral concert happens. But the other concentrations that we're going to talk about in a minute, they all meld in, because we expect our students who come in, and I want to focus on theater, to also be participating in classes and integrating in classes with students who want to come in and do robotics and automation. Because there is a lot of blend and a lot of crossover between what those curriculums entail. So a few of the concentrations that we've worked on for about the past year. From the needs assessment that Center State CEO helped us with, we came up with 4 concentrations, one being construction management. Right now we have a construction technology pathway in the Syracuse City School District, and this is a little different. Construction management is pretty heavy duty. So this was the first curriculum writing session that we hosted, and we had this at CNS Companies right by the airport. And we had all these construction managers sitting around the table, and we planned for about an hour and a half, and we were there for about 3 hours because of all the information that they produced and that they gave us regarding construction management and what their expectations would be for kids who would be in a program like this, and what it would look like, what it would sound like. And they were getting excited, and I really want to focus on this. So we've built out 6 concentrations already, and every time we're at the table with our content experts, they are so appreciative to be part of this educational process, so that their voice is heard and they have a place at the table. And really that excitement alone had our people coming back to us. So construction management was the first one that we focused on. The second one is robotics and automation. So we held this session, the first one up at OCC. Again, robotics and automation, a little different than construction management. Where construction management, there's some linear learning that has to happen. You have to know this before you know this, but there's a lot of different things going on at the same time. And for a teacher to come in or for an instructor to come in, they can build this curriculum or adapt the curriculum and really figure out where do students need the extra initiative, where do they need the extra help, where do we have to supplement some things and add some things, or where can we adjust. Whereas robotics and automation is more linear. You have to know one thing after another in order to work with these robots and all the automation process. Jody and I had the opportunity, along with the superintendent, to visit the Amazon warehouse in Clay. And it's a completely autonomous warehouse. So I think at one point, if at max, there will only be 400 employees in that huge, it's like half a mile long facility, because it's all automated. But you need to have a workforce that knows how to run and how to program and how to code these robots. So some are like the robotic arms that Fanuc makes, and you've seen them. They're the bright yellow arms that pick something up, drop it off somewhere else. Others are like giant Roombas that really go out, are programmed to interact with one another, pick something up and bring it out. That's all robotics and automation. So from the very, very basics of coding to actually being able to run and build the robots and automation. Again,
And I see that you have JMA on there, because they're kind of sort of the same type of idea.
Yep.
Okay.
So with JMA too, we're already partnering with JMA because JMA is right in ITC's backyard, right within walking distance. So we already have a partnership that we're talking with them, and that's one great thing that Jody has really helped out with the CTE department in the Syracuse City School District. We're about a year or two away from having these programs actually be implemented, but anybody who wants to participate with us, I have 27 pathways. I can hook you up with whomever you want and help out kids right now. And that's been a great part of, like, Jody, not a week goes by where I don't get an email or two. Jody made a connection. Hey, I want to hook you up with Bruno. He can hook you up with the right CTE pathways, which is great. And JMA is one of those examples. The third one we did is data analytics, which again, like Jody had mentioned before, this is way over my head and Jody's head with what data analytics is. But
It sounds impressive.
and it really is awesome. So we held this at Upstate offered to hold this session with us, and it was great because the medical field uses data analytics constantly, but it's used all the way from the medical field, but also sports. Sports teams use data analytics like there's no tomorrow for as far as crowds coming in to the players that they're going to recruit.
Everybody but the Boston Red Sox, right, Joe?
We would hope, but Yankees are 30 games over 500, so we don't have to talk about that. But data analytics was great. Again, very linear. You have to know certain things prior to going on. You build upon your knowledge. But there's a lot of great stuff, and again, a number of fields that is opened up by data analytics.
So of course, I'm going to ask one more question, then I'm
Go
going to
ahead.
be
You can ask as
quiet.
many questions as you
No,
want.
I can't. But anyway. So when we talk about all of the different things that's going to take place in this STEAM school, right? And across the city, in the Syracuse City School District, we're always talking about diversity. So what is diversity and the instructors going to look like in this package?
I think what we're trying to do, even in the SCSD right now, is we want our teachers to reflect who their students are. And I know that we attempt to do that currently within the school district, and that would be no different in this building as well. Who are our kids in front of us, and that should be reflected upon that, because there is, research shows us that when you make the connection with who your instructor is, you see yourself in
Because
that
we
role.
stay stuck in black and white, but I think in Syracuse, we have a huge diverse
Absolutely.
a group of people, and I think that everybody should be represented in some form or fashion.
Absolutely.
Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more. And as far as that goes too, when we talk about diversity, these pathways, we want to build these pathways so that they're opened up, not just to the diverse community, but for any student, whether he or she has an IEP, a 504, it's an English language learner. Everybody should have accessibility to all of these pathways. And we want to make sure that we're building them, even if we have to build a parallel pathway within the pathway to accommodate what a student needs. We want to make sure we're doing it.
And one more ignorant question, and I know it's gonna be accessible for disabled, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So the fourth concentration that we worked on was entrepreneurship. Again, this one, similarly to construction management, is nonlinear. When we brought these experts in and we met at MACME, and we were all around the table, again, here was a 90-minute presentation that we had planned for, went to 3 hours because of just the conversations that people were having and what we can add in there and the excitement around the table. Very nonlinear, really can go across the board with things. But these 4 concentration right here, construction management, robotics, automation, data analytics, and entrepreneurship, are all based on the needs assessment that was done by Center State CEO. In addition to that,
Can I just jump in here?
Okay,
One
go
sec-
ahead.
The one thing that I want to emphasize is we have stackable credentials in there. It's very unique. So it's built in the curriculum and also self-paced. So construction management, Procore is the gold standard for construction management across the nation. They are giving us the software for free, and students will earn these credentials throughout it. And they were saying when they look for recruiting the companies, they look for those credentials now. For every one of those, we have the gold standard for the stackable credentials that will be part of the curriculum, and also an opportunity to self-pace. So if some student wants to go on their own, and makes them more marketable. But just like the CT is industry standard, so will the stackable credentials.
and because these 4 concentration next to, we built these out to have CTE endorsement, so New York State CTE endorsement as well. And we're really breaking the mindset of what CTE traditionally, what kind of student traditionally went into a CTE pathway. Because still to this day, when we talk to people about career and technical education, sometimes people think, well, that's where a kid who academically can't really succeed would go, because it's more trades oriented. And that's not it at all. All of these pathways, like Jody said, will have concurrent enrollment. Students will be up on campus from all of our campus partners or all higher education partners that we have. They have those stackable credentials and those business and industry certifications. So if anything, concentrations like this are more rigorous than just the traditional high school pathway.
Before you go on, it's 12 o'clock. We have a finance committee meeting. We're going to bite a few minutes from your bidding. But I would like, before you go on, to bring in Mary Robbins and tell us a little bit about the involvement of the city, which is what we're going to be voting on Monday. If you can just take us through it real quick. And
Good afternoon, Councilors. Mary Robison, City Engineer. Engineering's involvement is really working with the school district during the design process and reviewing the plans and reviewing the budget and the cost estimates.
okay, are we all set with that?
Yes.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
And I'll make this quick. 2 additional concentrations that we really focused on in this past year: entertainment engineering and media tech and design, if it comes up. And what we really wanted to try to do is something entirely different than what we haven't done in the Syracuse City School District yet, but combine the fine arts and career and technical education and make 2 pathways and create 2 pathways that are more fine arts related. And this goes back to the conversation you were having about like gearheads and that Jody was having about Syracuse Film. Because we have the Lincoln Auditorium there, and that is the centerpiece of that building, we really want to try to bring in things like entertainment engineers, which is everything that happens behind the scenes, whether it's a theater production, a commercial, a movie, whatever it is. This encompasses everything that happens behind the scene. For every person that's in front of the camera, there are about 100 behind the camera. Media tech and design really has a lot to do with animation. Jody talked about 5 peaks and really melding that way. One thing, and again, for sake of time, all six of these concentrations, along with our fine arts concentrations, these students will be working together. They'll be taking courses at the same time, and not just the traditional courses, math, science, English, social studies, PE, anything like that, but all those stackable credentials, all those concurrent enrollment courses that we'll have with our partners in higher education, anything like that, students will be together. So if there is a production that the school is putting on, every one of these concentrations will be working towards that production, because it'll be that project-based learning, that work-based learning experience, that authentic experience that they'll be getting.
Excellent. Are there any additional questions?
No, I just want to tell Jody he taught me something. And you talked about the whoop when the bell rings every 45 minutes. You're absolutely right.
Okay, anybody else? No? So thank you very much
you
for
very
joining us
Thank
today
you.
and bringing all this fabulous information. Thank you.
So this,
The floor is yours.
Yeah. This wasn't just, this is a melt.
it was, you got a different one.
Yeah.
Let me see, this is this, which one?
I just want the one that ain't melting.
Citron, so you want this one? They both were the same.
You just,
Yeah.
I didn't feel the
Yeah.
other one.